We're in a race against the Nazis. And I know what it means if the Nazis have a bomb.
They have a 12-month head start.
18.
How could you possibly know that?
We've got one hope. All America's industrial might and scientific innovation connected here. A secret laboratory. Keep everyone there until it's done.
Let's go recruit some scientists.
Da, 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 da. You sound insane. You realize that? Yeah. The whole world gone crazy! Are you seriously? It's showtime.
We've been waiting for this conversation for a long time. The long-awaited next film from Christopher Nolan. It's Oppenheimer. I'm Kent, joined by Richard and Brian. Richard had both of these movies in the movie draft. What a weekend for you it was, Richard.
It was, yeah. I'm not gonna lie, I'm so coked out right now. Just celebrating. It's the only way to Barbieheimer. No, it was good. It was good. Better than I expected it to be, for sure. I mean, I thought Barbie definitely would do well. But as we talked about in the Barbieheimer app, both kind of doubled what I thought they would do. So God bless IMAX and God bless Barbie.
I mean, it's great that the movies were successful, but I think the biggest win was that these were both good movies.
Yeah, make good movies. People go see them. Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, I mean, we would have gone and seen them regardless, but the fact that we got to sit through two basically A to A plus type movies was all the better. I mean, I had such a blast this weekend at the theater. You know, I was like, man, this is really special. I just felt the energy, especially when I sat down.
So you were 3 for 3.
Yeah. The Caviezel crowd was, they were pretty rowdy. I think they were yelling that the projector wasn't working, but they were very rowdy. Anyway, man, when I sat down for Oppenheimer, the energy was palpable, completely packed, Dolby Vision screening. Just general thoughts for me. I love Nolan. I mean, I think I was higher on Tenet than a lot of people. I just appreciate his enthusiasm for the craft, his enthusiasm for original material. Even if he's doing Batman, he's going to do it in an original way. He's going to write it himself, or him and his brother at the time, right? And so I appreciate that he still kind of does it the old school way, but makes big movies the old school way. You know, a lot of filmmakers do it the old school way, but they make movies for the Oscar crowd and the film nerds. And he makes movies for everybody. So I really appreciate that. With this, I mean, what an interesting story this is. The Manhattan Project. Can't believe there hasn't been a more definitive movie about this subject in the time, maybe because it's such a daunting task to try to summarize that story in an effective way in 2 hours or 3 hours. But to center it on Oppenheimer, I thought was a special decision. The way he wrote the movie, the way he cast the movie. It's one of the most well-cast movies I've ever seen, you know, in terms of like picking the right guys, people that still have names but play the right roles. I mean, it had star power, but it wasn't like beating you over the head with, why is this guy in this movie? Just to have a name? Like I never once felt that in any moment.
Why is Jake Paul playing Truman?
I mean, he had Josh Peck from Drake and Josh in this movie, and I never once thought like, why is Josh Peck in this movie? You know, like it all made
cool
sense.
If it had been Drake though.
Yeah, Drake. Well, like
Drizzy, little freestyle.
Drake. Actually Drake.
Yeah. Yeah, not that Drake.
Drake Bell. I was like, well, he's
not the sex
a pedophile. So
yeah.
Just general thoughts. I was like, there's no way this could be as good as like our expectation for it, as what this movie, like the potential of this movie. And I thought it was just about as good as the potential of this story with his approach. There's only one other movie I can think of, but this has got to be the most well-paced 3-hour movie I've ever seen. And there was not a moment in the movie where I was bored, where it dragged, where there wasn't something interesting happening, or if not interesting, of note in the story. Like there wasn't a wasted scene really in a 3-hour movie, which is something I never thought I would say coming out of a 3-hour movie. It's like, okay, here's 30 minutes you can cut and still have the same experience. I didn't feel like that with this. I thought it was extremely well done. The non-narrative, the non-linear story with the narrative, I thought worked effective, and that's a Nolan trope that he used again very effectively here. And I just thought, like, the way he shot this thing, the actors, the writing, it all came together. Sometimes it all just comes together. The music, right? Everything hit on the note. And I guess this has got to be the most well-reviewed Nolan film. Am I correct in that? Maybe Dark Knight.
Dark Knight was pretty up there, yeah.
Yeah. I
mean, he's been pretty consistent. I think Tenet was his, worst reviewed film besides like his first movie, but like, and that was still 71% or something. It's not like it was murdered by the critics, but this was we talked about this with this new deal, not to get the dollar and cents of it all, because we did that already with Barbieheimer episode, but like, this is the first movie on this Universal deal, right? And so we had talked about a few months ago of this one felt very like One for Me, the one for me, one for them kind of thing. He was leading with the One for Me, definitely a passion project, a historical epic, not the kind of movie that in the last 5 years especially has done particularly well at the box office. And it was surprising to us that this would be the lead. You would think they'd say, hey, come over to Universal, you make your Christopher Nolan's Jurassic World 4, and then you can do whatever you want. But it was interesting. They led with this, and it did very well. It's going to make a lot of money. It's not a tent pole for them, I don't think. I don't think it was designed to be that, so that's fine. But it's going to triple its budget, maybe. I can see it's getting to $300-400 million, right?
Sure.
And
for sure.
He made it very responsibly at 100 and marketed, let's say, another 50 to 75 on that. Like, if this one makes money, they're going to, I think, if he has a more, less of a historical drama for his next idea, they'll definitely throw some money at it. So it's really interesting. Mm-hmm. There was some talk, 6 months ago, that this would not do that well, not just on our podcast, but like there was something like maybe he would go back to WB if this bombed. But it appears to have worked out for all parties, and so
Warner Brothers is just happy with Barbie, I think.
Yeah, I think they're doing all right. But it's very interesting what his next movie will be. Will he lean into more of a period where he goes, hey, you know what? I've proven that I'm going to make you money as long as I keep the budget responsible and actors want to work for me. So I'm going to just do cool, interesting, whether it's historical or smaller drama with some, it's Christopher Nolan. He's always going to have some thrills in there.
Sure.
Or will he say, no, I'm doing Fast 11. So,
well, he has thrown out there recently that he still wants to make a Bond movie.
Yeah, I think he's definitely making a Bond movie at some point in the next few years.
But I don't think, can he do that with the Universal deal? Does he have to get these 5 movies done first or whatever that?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because they have,
Amazon has the Bond rights, right?
It's MGM, but partially Amazon, but Amazon has international.
Amazon, I think, has the rights, but like they have to release them in theaters or something like that. There's some agreement there.
The biggest thing is that's the Broccoli family. And so like, I don't know how that all works with Universal. I'm sure agents have said if this opportunity were to come about, he has a carve out from that deal. But
I think Universal, if they want to keep him happy, they'd probably let him do whatever he wants, as long as the next Christopher Nolan original is with them. And I think Warner Brothers, they definitely made a mistake letting that one pass, because Christopher Nolan is certainly a filmmaker that fits what they're trying to do. Mm-hmm. And the fact that they let him kind of go do something else, I don't know, it doesn't speak well to them, but I think it's great for Nolan that he can still find a studio that'll give him $100 million to shoot it all on IMAX and shoot it for real, and still let him be Christopher Nolan. So
it's just
those days are drying up.
Such a shame they couldn't come together and make a real Christopher Nolan Grindelwald.
Oh, I was gonna say he'd be great for MacGruber.
Yeah,
MacGruber's at Universal, bro. So that's definitely in the cards.
If Forte had pitched, hey, we really wanted to do another MacGruber, will you do it? Like, I think Christopher Nolan would have to, he would actually consider it. Like, he'd be like, let me think about it.
Yeah, no.
He wouldn't immediately turn it down.
It's a bummer that on the Rich Eisen thing that went viral this week, that he talked about
Talladega Nights
as a favorite of his when we know his true favorite.
That's right.
Those groups.
For what it's worth, Universal is the international distributor for the Bond
Okay,
movies.
so they could work out a deal. There's already stuff there. Yeah, I hope he does. I think he'd be. I love Bond and I like Christopher Nolan, so I think that'd be cool. But
Didn't Forte say that Christopher Nolan came to the set when they were in New Mexico because they were both doing, like, he was scouting locations or something for this, and they were there shooting the series, and he just came and hung out.
I think he was at a table read or something too.
Yeah.
He's a P1.
He's really like, it would be so funny if his next movie was like, me got to team up with my boy. Oh, Bond? No, MacGruber.
Or he did a Bond movie and then just brought in MacGruber in the third act.
MacGruber's the villain.
Now we're talking.
Yeah. No,
All right.
absolutely.
All right, Idris, you're going to want to do the celery trick. And
Brian, general thoughts.
Yeah, look, I was nervous about this.
the trailers weren't very
Tenet.
good, we should say.
Yeah, trailer was not the best trailers. Yeah, look, Nolan's probably my favorite director of this. I mean, Spielberg's always going to be my guy, but it feels like Spielberg is like, obviously Spielberg's sort of on the tail end of his career. He may still crank out another 20 movies. I don't know, but
He's still making good stuff. It's just
for sure,
connects to an audience, right?
Exactly. But I love Nolan, and I've loved Nolan since Memento. I saw that on DVD or whatever when it first came out, and remember being like, guys, this is so cool. And a lot of my friends not really digging it or getting it, I guess. I've always loved Nolan. I liked Tenet fine. I think too, I probably liked it more than most, but I was a little bit tepid on it. And I was a little bit nervous about this one. That it was going to, I knew that it was going to be well made because he doesn't make movies poorly ever. I think he could probably make a good movie in his sleep, just from a technical standpoint. But I thought there was a pretty decent chance that this wasn't going to connect with audiences. The July release date felt weird, even not counting the Barbie part of it. And to your point, Richard, like, this very much felt like a one for me, and then I'll go make your little Bond movie, or whatever. And I really try to avoid like super like hyperbole and really over exaggerating. We're early in the decade, but I thought this was the best movie of the decade for me. So this was from minute one through the whole thing. I think you're spot on, Kent. I'm not sure that I've ever seen a 3-hour movie that
Paced off.
held my attention. For
The only other
entire
one I could
3
think
hours.
of was Titanic.
Yeah, I hate Titanic, so that one's fine with me. Yeah. I'm gonna stay on my corner. But I get what you're saying there. But no, I know some people that were bored at stretches of this. There was kind of a running joke in our Discord of making a 3-hour movie about meetings and stuff. I was like on the edge of my seat the entire movie. I think a lot of that is the score. This is one of the better scores we've heard. And if I say that, hopefully it means something because I don't really pay attention to the score like you guys do. I thought it was
Ludwig.
one of the best uses of score ever.
Ludwig
in a movie.
Göransson's like, he's low key becoming better than Zimmer.
Oh,
Not to mention like
not a big Zimmer
producing Gambino and doing all the other stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy is
Yeah.
Mandalorian. I mean, he is like John
I thought
Williams.
you were an Elfman
mixed-
guy, or is that just
He's like
look,
John Williams mixed
just
with
in
Mark
real life, though?
Ronson,
That's
mixed
your
with
deal.
Hans
Yeah.
Zimmer.
Right.
Kent just loves Elfman's vibe and behavior.
Yeah. Style. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
He
big
likes some
fan.
shirt
No,
pecs.
like this was.
What if Carrot Top was even more creepy, Jack? Well,
Carrot Top's
I've got the
creepy
person.
dad.
So funny.
That's the movie we should make. Our A24 movie should be Carrot Top, Danny
Danny
Elfman, a weird like vaudevillian.
An
father and son.
A24 movie with Carrot Top is not the worst idea.
I mean,
Like that sounds like something
we could
weird
get
enough to
funding for
just
that,
be
I
great.
bet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Super like Sean Baker's Carrot Top movie. He's just super sad in Las Vegas all the time.
Yeah. It's the real story of chairman of the board, or whatever.
Yeah.
Just
They can make it as long as they give us sunglasses off. Props.
Ayo. I like it.
See what you did there. Yeah, I mean, I agree, Brian. This is about it's the best movie of the year, I think. You know, coming off Barbie, I think that was fantastic. But like, this movie is going to be a real player at the end, I think.
Yeah, look, I want to see Killers of the Flower Moon. I want to see, you know, how well it does. But like,
Telling y'all, Maestro.
yeah, but this as I was watching it, I don't really think about awards unless it's like an actor and you get the speech and you're like, yep, there's the Oscar moment right there. That's the tape they're sending in. I try not to think about that kind of stuff very much, and I don't have a problem doing that. I was perpetually just like, yeah, there's, you know, I'm just like tallying up in my head. Yeah, there's a nomination for that. Here's a nomination. I mean, it was just it's just kind of like, I mean, it's just kind of like it's a masterpiece. It's kind of like a perfectly made movie, and from a technical standpoint, it's untouchable. And so when you add to, and I think Nolan does that with pretty much every movie, with the exception of some of the weird sound stuff that we've had over the years with Tom Hardy roles and stuff. He's an impeccable filmmaker from a technical standpoint. It's usually the story that sometimes can be problematic or troublesome for him in terms of like, is this a great movie or just a good movie? And he definitely, I mean, obviously Ledger won the freaking Oscar. I'm not sure that his reputation as an actor's director in terms of just like getting the performance out of an actor is as good as it deserves to be. And this kind of felt like a moment of like, yeah, I'm really good at this, guys. Like yes, obviously all of these people are super talented. I'm going to draw the best out of them for this thing too. I don't know that he's had too many movies that are like true actor showcase movies.
Ledger's the one I can think of.
With Ledger,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
But Ledger got all that credit, maybe justifiably, but you're right.
Right.
That didn't spill over to Nolan at all.
Right. So this kind of sort of filled that gap as well. It was like, yeah, I have this in my toolbox too. And so, yeah, it's like I said, as I'm watching the movie, I'm like, gosh, this is so freaking good. And that just kept building to a place. And then like 3 days later, I'm still thinking about this movie, even having seen another movie that I loved in Barbie and, you know, gave an A+ to. It's like, this is just such a freaking great movie. And so I'm at the place now where I'm like, this is you know, really special territory.
Such an interesting story. I mean, I thought the way they approached the subject of having to discover nuclear fission, Oppenheimer, this really played more like a biopic than I expected it to. I thought it would be much more focused on the Manhattan Project itself, but you know, it definitely delved into Oppenheimer's life before that and after, which I liked.
I gotta say real fast, not to interrupt you, but that's what I was worried about because I hate biopics.
Yeah.
And that was the vibe I got from the trailer, was like, this is just going to be Nolan's biopic, which is to say that it will probably be a really good biopic, but it will still be a biopic. And
Tim Meadows just has like nuclear material. Like, you don't want any of this stuff, Robert.
Exactly. Yeah. But I felt like instead it was sort of like revolutionizing that concept of like what a biopic can be.
Such a great script.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff in this movie. I mean, this is a 3-hour movie, so they go over a lot of stuff, but oddly, like, there's still significant stuff in this story that they could have focused on that they left out, right?
For sure.
The fact, such a big part of this that nobody talked about, which I thought Nolan did a great job of focusing on, was the fact that nobody had ever set off a nuclear device like this before in history. Mm-hmm. So they legitimately were fearing that they were going to blow up the earth when they set this thing off.
Right.
Because they had will this thing just set fire to all the air in the atmosphere is what they thought. And all the air is going to
continue to burn forever.
Right. When you think about the weight of that, when you press that button, it might be the end of all of us, is quite significant. So I thought the weight of that and the near zero and going back to that was very well done. And the other fact and I love the illustration of this. This might have been truthful to fact. Is the fact that they were mining this precious metal of uranium and plutonium, one atom at a time.
Gosh.
And, you know, like the marbles going in the thing to represent, here's how much uranium we've mined. Like, it was a race against the Nazis for not only coming up with the technology, but actually mining the necessary elements to even pull it off. And their original plan was to go with plutonium because it was the smaller glass, right? They could get more of it faster. It's like, okay, if we can create a device with plutonium, then that's going to be the more replicable solution. Hopefully it works that way, right? And they tried it and it failed with the plutonium, which they have a moment in this where, remember when the guy comes to Oppenheimer, he's like, we tried it, it failed, implosion failed. And he's like, what do you mean it failed? And then they have to go with this other method with the uranium, which would delay the project. Like, they could have focused much more on that aspect. Like, a whole nother 30 minutes of this movie could have been like focusing on plutonium versus uranium, which is a big part of like the story of the Manhattan Project, but he didn't focus on it there, right, which is super impressive. It's like, wow, you did a 3-hour movie that was very entertaining, not a wasted scene, and also left like good stuff on the cutting room floor. Wow, that's pretty impressive. It's not like you're having to make up stuff to make this thing of 3 hours interesting.
No,
it's like, no, there's so much that like we didn't even get to half of the good stuff. This script was just fantastic, though. I mean, this is like a Sorkin level script. Yeah. It's amazing.
Dialogue's so good in it. I read the American Prometheus book that this is, you know, loosely based on, you know, kind of edited out of more than anything. Earlier in the year to kind of get ready for this. And it's a wonderful bit of history, but it's certainly, I mean, he definitely did quite a bit of adapting, you know, to make it, not that it's not dry or anything like that, but it's not particularly cinematic at all. He's just such a genius at crafting that out in such a way. I mean, he's becoming a really, really, I mean, he was always a good writer, but he's becoming such a great screenwriter, which is, you know, it seems obvious, but you know, he's always been such a great director, but it's his dialogue's so strong. Like I said, the editing ability is such a different muscle than the writing ability, and I feel like he just edited this book into a perfect screenplay.
Sure. Yeah, I think too, this is a movie that kind of shows some of his influences from other directors and filmmakers too, and he's done that before. That's not I mean, you know, Interstellar especially, I think, plays on a lot of influences, and sort of at times I feel like Interstellar kind of tries to bridge the gap between Kubrick and Spielberg in a way, and to some varying degrees of success, I think, on that. A
lot of Hitchcock and Inception too.
Yeah, totally, absolutely. Yeah, there were several moments where I was like, gosh, that feels very. There were several that jumped out at me. The one that I remember, I was like, man, this feels like good Malick. Like when Malick is making good movies, which seem to only happen when he was not being a prolific director, and when just kind of like every 10 years was making a movie. There's some Tree of Life in here that I think works really well. And there are other, you guys mentioned Sorkin. I was also like very impressed with the script and the dialogue and how well it flowed without feeling like, I mean, I love Sorkin, but I always feel like the dialogue is the movie, you know, is the main takeaway that you get from a Sorkin, which is great. That's totally fine. I'm not knocking it at all. And when it's great, I really love it and really enjoy it. But if it's 1 degree off of great, you're like, all right, I'm a little tired of this. Like, come on, like ease up a little bit. I thought it was a magnificent job of crafting great dialogue for these characters without that becoming distracting in its greatness, and it like just kind of helped things move and keep the flow and the tension and stuff, and without it becoming like I said, a distraction of it, which is awesome. It was cool to see some of his influences come to the screen here instead of it just being like, I'm Chris Nolan, I'm doing my Nolan thing over here. It was kind of a combination of those two things, which I loved.
But there was some Nolan beats in it as well for historical.
For sure.
again, essentially a drama. He really, there was that kind of, it's funny. I was talking to my friend, my neighbor, Carlos, about it. He kept saying, we ran into each other like 3 different times this weekend, and other people would always just be like, what'd you think of Inception? Or pardon me, of Oppenheimer? And he would say, I heard him say several times, like, I just felt the whole time like I was on this kind of the beginning part of a roller coaster. There was that pacing of the Nolan, that tick, 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 tick.
Great point. Yeah.
And it really had that, even though the payoff of this, there's a couple payoffs, but it's certainly not to the level of something like Interstellar or anything like that.
Right.
It's really just a kind of a classic, it has almost as more in common with A Few Good Men than it does, like you said, to the Sorkin thing. Like, it feels like a drama of a certain type with some
Fincher,
some
it felt
big
like to me,
moments.
honestly.
Yeah, has some Fincher to it for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, what did you guys think of the Downey role? The whole black and white aspect of the movie. Obviously, it's mainly the third act when it really comes to. I mean, that's one thing I didn't expect about this. Like, oh no, we're gonna get an hour after they drop the bomb.
I know.
In Hiroshima, not like the Trinity test, the Hiroshima, and then another hour. So, I mean, which I really enjoyed because so much of that's part of the story I had no idea about. But what did you think about Downey in that part?
He's someone that I think has really been searching for his next thing,
Yeah.
And at one point it was going to be like Perry Mason, and then it was Doolittle, and then it was before that it was like The Judge, like those kind of movies.
Yeah.
Just kind of feeling it out, going, it seemed like he was someone that was saying, I have more money than God, and so I'm just going to do things I'm interested in, but I'm waiting for that right thing. But like, filmmakers weren't really engaging with him, like you would think they would. Why wasn't he in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood or something like that? This is, and then it's like kind of the first time it seemed like a major bona fide canon filmmaker was like, oh, who's available?
Sure.
He's not doing any more of these Iron Men. Did you know that? Like, it was like kind of like news to all of them. We can get Downey, who was, one of the most interesting actors when he was sober of his era.
Right.
And it was fun to see him do something in that vein. And a much older, he's kind of, in a lot of ways, depressingly old in this. And the character is not old, but like just such a fuddy-duddy, It was so different than what we've been used to seeing him in pop cinema, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah. It was very different to see him. Yeah. The old version, he used to be like chiseled and like has this great hair and everything. And it wasn't that character at all, which was a departure for him. But man, it certainly felt.
He's getting on the McCartney list, though, I will say. The McCartney Costas list. Like there's some orange hue in real life. There's an orange hue to that hair. Like, Robert, you're not fooling anybody, man. You know what I mean? A little gray in the temples. It's fine. No one's talking about what a great hair of naturally brown hair Robert Downey Jr. has.
I thought the overarching storyline, overarching messages of in my opinion, man's greatest achievement versus their greatest downfall, which is kind of the human element of the Downey storyline. I just loved that so much. And Nolan's insistence to make this more than just about here's how they made the bomb, which really stuck out to me. I mean, not parable, but like the allegory at the beginning of, I don't know if this was really happened. I don't think it, like poisoning the apple, right? And the forbidden fruit. I mean, thought that was like the downfall of man. I thought that was a whole point he was trying to make with that moment earlier in the movie. But it straddles the line of telling you how the project was made, but also like, oh, this was made by human beings. Like they weren't. Yeah, they were good at math, but it doesn't waste time. Here's how the math is. Here's how you split the atom. Here's how, like it really could have gone into that and been a great movie of like, here's the technical thing of how an atom bomb was made. But it was way more about the people in it than anything else. but I thought like, gosh, the deposition scenes were great. I thought that was a great way to break it up with Jason Clarke being kind of in there for those. And then you had the Los Alamos stuff, which I thought was fantastic. Boom, here comes Matt Damon into the movie, right?
Yeah.
As this incredible character.
Never makes a
doesn't
movie
take no
worse,
crap from
you know?
anybody.
You just throw Matt Damon in there. You're never like, dadgummit, this guy again. It's God, he's good.
He had a great line in one of the interviews. He's said about his character, like, that being people's friends was not on his list of priorities. He said,
People
if you
say
had
that to
asked
me.
this guy, do people like you? He would have just looked at you like, I don't even understand the question. What,
I don't
you know,
care.
it's not even up in his mind at all. Like,
Yeah.
get this guy to like, he had a job to do. And I really got that. I got that from him.
Did you hear his story about getting cast in this?
No, I didn't.
He had told his wife, he was like, I think I saw it in 2 different interviews, and in one of them he literally said we were in like marriage counseling, and I told her in counseling, like, I'm not okay. I get it. I hear what you're saying. I'm not gonna work for whatever years he put on it, 2 years or whatever, unless Christopher Nolan calls. Like, that's it. That's the only one. And then I think he said like
All
within a
pass.
couple of weeks, Chris Nolan called and was like, hey, I have this part. And so he has to like turn to his wife and be like, so like, I know what I said, and so I'm gonna stick to this. And
Yeah. Gosh, that's a great story. I love that. Yeah, I mean, he pops up in Interstellar.
Unless
too.
they make The Wall 2. I'm on the first.
Or another Stuck on You.
We're stuck on YouTube.
Yeah,
Dang
yeah.
it. Yeah.
Stuck on 2.
Hey-o. All right. Don't give him away.
To start the script. Yeah.
He was fantastic. I thought all the supporting roles were, I mean, Dane DeHaan, wasn't he in this?
Yeah.
God, I hadn't seen him literally since the Spider-Man movie, and he was fantastic. I
Brian's
mean,
nightmares.
also Elgort / Aaron Rick was
There's no way to, again, that's the only thing. We
was
don't know.
great.
He was really good.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Him with Downey was just fantastic. And then Benny Safdie, right?
Yep.
Holy moly. Like, you see
Crumholtz.
why
More, man.
he's letting Josh direct this movie with Sandler. Like, this guy could be a real actor. And then Rami. I was like, why is Rami Malek here?
Yeah.
And then he had the moment at the end where it's like, wow, great use of Rami Malek.
Right. Yeah.
We need
There
to make
is a
movie called
place
Weird.
for him, but it's not starring in music biopics. It's
Right.
It's do stuff like this.
We could just do
Yeah,
a
I
movie
mean-
called Weird with he and Kate McKinnon, both in movies this weekend. And it's just them being weird. What do you think of that?
Seems real off-putting. It's just
Yeah, just kind of creeping everyone out. No real secondary move. Just that.
right. It's just kind of a contest to see who can stay in the movie the longest, you know? It's just really
Then I thought obviously the lady roles of Florence and
God dang, man.
Emily Blunt as his 2 wives, I guess, throughout his life. I mean, just a really interesting way to depict kind of the dark and light side of familial relationships, love of the past, having to balance that with work, right? So it's only Christopher Nolan can do it that way. And I thought this is a really understated performance from Emily Blunt too.
She's so
It
good.
She's
was,
not going to
yeah.
get a lot of awards buzz for this, but like, this is one of her better roles in terms of like knowing the energy to bring.
I could
That's a great
see.
point.
I think like best supporting actress is always kind of a difficult. Usually, at least, is usually kind of a difficult ballot to fill out, which is unfortunate, but it's kind of factual. It is the way it is. I could see this making her having a real run, win award. I mean, we'll see. There's 20 movies we haven't even heard of that are going to come out.
Amy
in
Adams
December,
has at
you know?
least 6 desperate swings at it. So
Yeah,
later
for
this
sure.
year. So
For sure. But yeah, this is the kind of performance that, like, when you're watching this movie, there's 100 things you're gonna get to before you think of Emily Blunt.
Yep.
But in 6 months, when you're filling out your Oscar ballot and you're like, gonna go back and revisit some of these movies, you're gonna be like, what was really freaking good is Emily Blunt. Maybe that's, maybe she ends up on my ballot somewhere here, because she has a couple of moments, right? Like her deposition up against Clark and stuff is kind of you can put that on the reel if you've got the nomination. But then there's so many other little moments where she's just very strong and great, and so I could see this becoming a best supporting nomination at some point, because she's great in it. Florence is great too. Both of those are great. I mean, this thing is just stacked with great performances. You go down to like, hey, is that Josh? At 20 minutes in, maybe, of him being on screen, Tobin turns to me and goes, "Was that Josh Hartnett?" I was like, "Yeah,
He was awesome. Oh my god,
he was great in it." Matthew Modine's great. I mean, this is like stacked with great performances. Kenneth Branagh. I mean,
Yeah.
this is the SAG Best Cast Award
For sure. Best casting.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Best ensemble.
Right.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
That is
It's the Avengers of he's in this, she's in this. Like,
that is spot on. I felt like Florence had more Oscar-y type moments. She's crying in the movie,
Sure.
more dramatic downfall of the character, that whole type of thing. So, but I just thought Emily Blunt's performance was just, just really underappreciated. There's so many more things people will mention about this movie than that, and it deserves a mention.
No, I totally agree. Yeah.
The tension that's built up to the Trinity test, like once they get to that sequence of the Trinity test, I mean, that was just flawless editing. The countdown, the rain. I mean, good God. I was on the edge of my seat. I was like, this is some of the best.
yeah.
I mean, almost exceeded the expectation that I had, because I had high expectations for that sequence going in, because it's coming, but it delivered. I mean, the way they depicted the bomb going off, Josh Peck's like about to touch it, the way they focused on all the emotions of the different emotions of the people, of Benny having the sunscreen on his face, just like bring it on type guy, people ducking behind. I mean, it was so well done and such an interesting way to shoot it. What did you guys think about that sequence, Brian?
Yeah, man, I thought that was like, that's where this moved to me. That's where this jumped from, man, this is a great movie, to this is a masterpiece. That was
when they put the bomb on a truck and they're like, all right, we're actually doing this thing. It's like, wow.
Yeah. I don't know how you top that in a scene. I mean, it's a long scene too, so the degree of difficulty goes up, and you get one little lull where he and Damon are talking to each other and stuff, and that's a great, addition to that sequence. But then to have, I mean, the score usage there is perfect. It is really driving you at that point. And then the dropout of all sound, when the bomb actually goes off.
That was such a great moment. Oh.
It was one of those things where it was like, I was expecting that. Like, I was expecting the sound to drop. The way that the movie had been going up to that point, and the score, and I don't know, like, I don't think that Tobin was expecting that. I don't think my friends that were there, the normies, I'm not sure they were necessarily expecting that. But we see so many movies, we know how these things work. Like, I was expecting the bomb's going to go off, we're going to see the flame, and we're not going to hear anything. And even still, it was like a mesmerizing sequence. And then to have the sound come in at the decibel that it's at, when it reaches that station, and then a little bit quieter when it reaches the second station, and then quieter still when it reaches the third station. Like, I would imagine too that he probably timed that out, the way that it was in real life. If he didn't, it felt that way, which kind of added to the whole thing. That was just a genuinely, truly perfect sequence of filmmaking, and I don't know how you top it. Like, that's one of those, that's an immediate put this scene in the Hall of Fame, or the stick it in the time capsule, or the Library of Congress, or whatever you want to say, whenever you want to do it. This is an immediate entry into the best scenes that we've ever had on film, I think.
Yeah, literally on film, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I gotta say too, I don't do the film dork thing too much. I think I'm like different nerdy, like I've said before, but like I'm sitting on the back row, and I could hear the tick, 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 tick of the film, through the course of this, seeing this in 70 millimeter. And I don't get real filmy about that stuff most of the time, but it definitely added to the experience for me this time. I was like, God dang it, this is so cool. Like, just what an experience to be here and to be able to hear the film. I don't know. It was a nice little bonus for this thing for me.
Yeah, the way they depicted the bomb going off, I mean, the light as bright as the sun, because you're literally harnessing the power of the sun in that explosion was so significant, way more significant than I could have ever even imagined. The way it just lit up that, and then you see this cloud, form, and the way he shot the flames and like the epic music it was honestly beautiful and terrifying at the same time. And I'm sure that the people watching it had the same feeling, like, wow, this is incredible. But also the way he captured the emotion after the dust kind of settles and they realize it worked. The emotion of Oppenheimer not knowing whether to be excited or upset about it was great too, because obviously he's very excited that, like, yes, the science worked, but like his realization of like, oh no, this is gonna get dropped like really soon once it worked, and that the meeting with the president overseas, which is a real deal, like they were testing the bomb as he was like in the meetings with Stalin, right? And they had to telephone over there and say, like, by the way, the nuke worked. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, by the way, we've got this great new weapon, So it was like, if that test hadn't worked, who knows what happens in the world? I mean, you think about the weight of this event and Oppenheimer having to deal with that. Nobody could ever sympathize with that.
Sure.
No one. Something that you did, leading to that. And the point of it being this had to happen for the greater good is so apparent in this movie. And when you look back at history, I mean, obviously that was the case with ending the war and having the Cold War and all that, and just the economic boom around the world that caused. But like the sequence, that was my favorite dialogue scene in the movie, was them just deciding who to drop it on. And can we drop it not on civilians? Can we drop it on this town? No, I can't drop it there because I visited there on vacation. Are you kidding me? Like, that was actually
I thought that was one of the most important
so good
lines in the movie. Like, I laughed in a real, I mean, maybe it didn't
psycho
sound
way.
that way to other people, but like in a real, like, bitter, like, holy, like, oh my gosh, like, I can't believe, but I thought that was like, I thought that kind of drove home a lot of the point of what we're dealing with here. It was, I don't know if I would call that subtle, but it sort of came across as like, oh my God, like that. I guess what I'm saying is that line carried a lot more weight than a throwaway.
The line meant like, hey, these were human beings that decided this, like, and human element went into why this was decided the way it was. And I think that's very apparent. I mean, they really wanted at the beginning, I think, to drop one like over the ocean right near the shore so that everybody could see the power of the bomb and not do any damage. Be like, hey, by the way, here's what we got. But they thought that wouldn't do anything.
PETA was really against that, right? With the whales.
Right. They wouldn't like they thought that the Japanese commanders would just be like, all right, we're going to come attack you now, right? And they had no other option, essentially. In fact, so heavily that they had to drop another one. And that is a sad reality of the situation, but for anyone to think this was done without the utmost consideration for all aspects of it is, I don't know, a little bit mistaken. But the
it
second
still could have been the wrong decision, right? I mean, that's what's fascinating about it, right? It was not taken lightly, but then you could still obviously, 80 years later talk about the negatives impacts of this as well as the positives of ending the war, etc. Still like an interesting dialogue to have amongst people. So,
and also an interesting thing that they point out in that scene is like, what if Heisenberg gets a bomb and then he starts pointing out New York, then DC, right? Like that was what they were up against, was a race to beat these guys at this, because whoever gets it first is going to drop it somewhere, right? And so it was, oh man.
It's the game theory of it all.
Yeah. Whew. I can't imagine the pressure. So I thought the last hour where they focus on like him after the war, the scene of them showing the film of the victims with just showing his face was so effective. Of like, hey, we're not going to show the victims, but just, them having to deal with that in the immediate aftermath, I can't imagine.
Yeah, the sequence in the gym too is just like, that's a haunting sequence, and I think drives home the point better than showing the explosion, the actual explosion would do, or any of the doing the. I think you could have really easily
thing of
the Spielberg, Schindler's List. Let's show real footage at the end,
right? And I saw there was some criticism. And honestly, I think it's a fair point to make. It's not the point that I would make, but there was some criticism about like kind of turning this into like by not showing the devastation.
You're not saying we're not sorry. Yeah, there's like
no
or remorse.
Like you're sort of you're downplaying the destruction and instead focusing on one guy. And again, that's not the point that I would make, but I think that that's a fair point if that's your feeling, that's how you feel about it. I think that there's some validity to that. I just think that it could have very easily, going that route, could have very easily become exploitative, and it becomes a different movie at that point. Like, even if you did it in a, like, obviously I don't think Nolan would have done it in a Marvel-y kind of way, an explosion porn kind of way, but even if you would have done it in like a Saving Private Ryan kind of way, that does change what the movie is, and I think that the movie's better for not going that route and staying where it does, and instead showing the kind of the haunting and the horror of that. I also thought I think the movie does a perfect job, strikes the perfect balance of showing and giving voice to the doubts and the dissent and the questions and the concern, and then the after effect of the guilt and the feeling upset without it becoming over the top too much. Like it almost lets the audience kind of like, hey, where we have come over, the history of the last 80 years. And so now you kind of get to wrestle with it rather than like it. I actually think it's more profound and more effective because of that, rather than hitting it harder in the movie and seeing it harder on. Yeah,
he puts that on
him or the people involved. It kind of puts it on you to go home and be like, yeah, this isn't a feel-good time. Like, you're not going to go home feeling great about this, and you shouldn't. And whether you feel like this was the terrible choice that had to be made, or it was a terrible mistake, one way or the other, you get to go home. You're going home with that. It's not, it's not. We're not going to wrestle with that any further in the movie. And I think that's more. I think it's more effective because of that.
Absolutely.
What did you guys think of? I mean, the last thing I want to hit really is Cillian himself as Oppenheimer.
I mean, just give him the Oscar now. This is over, I think. Yeah, I thought he was incredible. I mean, we'll see what Leo does, but and Bradley Cooper, I guess, too, Richard. But yeah, that felt like about as good of a this is my Oscar performance as you can give, and it's not showy either, which is really kind of impressive to do that.
It's a couple accent slips.
Sure.
So weird he's British, right?
Irish. How dare you?
Or Irish.
Yeah.
Show some respect.
Sorry.
There's a couple of that, but other than that, he was great.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna grade this bad boy out at an A+. I mean, this is my favorite of the year, and if it's not in the top 10, I'll be floored. So, A+ for me. What about you, Brian?
Yeah, I think it's the best movie of the very young decade that we're in.
Is it his best movie? Is it Nolan's best movie?
I put The Dark Knight ahead of it because I have and will rewatch that movie 4,000 times, you know? And it's such a, I mean, it's such a reinvention of, I mean, Batman Begins does it too, but God, that movie is it's just such a perfect, this is what we can do with superhero movies. Got it. Okay. Like, and it's still, I think it still
holds
stands
up.
the test of time 15 years later. Yeah, exactly. But to me, this like puts him in a way. This puts him in a category similar to Spielberg. Not to Bill Simmons it back to the '86 Celtics all the time, but you know, when I think about the Spielberg movies, I think about Jurassic Park and Schindler's List, and then like I've maybe got one more viewing of Schindler's List in my lifetime, you know, because it's such a miserable, horrible experience, but it's such a great film. And then I'm gonna rewatch Jurassic Park 4 billion times, and also it is such a well-made film. And to be able to do both of those things is truly, I mean, there's not very many people that can do that. And
if he does it,
not that I didn't think that he was capable of this, because you know we've seen him kind of straddle various genres over the years, but this kind of cemented like, oh yeah, this guy can do whatever he wants to do, I think.
Yeah, if he doesn't do Bond next, it's so fascinating to see what he does next.
I guarantee you the title will be one word if he does something. What's your grade, Richard?
A+ for me as well.
Awesome. What a movie this was, and let the Heart Renaissance begin.
Started with Guy Ritchie brought him back last year.
Oh yeah, that's right.
All right, there we go. There's Oppenheimer for you. Please let us know what you thought of it, and make sure you subscribe, hit that like button, the whole YouTube stuff. But yeah, we'll talk to you guys soon at the cinema. Goodbye.
Hey baby, I hear the blues are calling, tossed salads and scrambled eggs. And maybe I seem a bit confused, yeah maybe, but I got you pegged. But I don't know what to do with those tossed salads and scrambled eggs. They're calling again. Scrambled eggs all over my face.
They're making me yah-yah, the salads and scrambled eggs.
They're calling again.